How did summer already disappear? It is back to school season already. My kids started school last week, and I kind of miss the free, lazy mornings and free days to fill in what we wanted, but I also am pretty relieved to have a little bit more structure in our day. And I'm still fine tuning all of our routines, but I thought it would be a good time to bring on a guest interviewer who is all about habit hacking. We know habits can be hard, especially as busy moms. There's just so much to do. And so I thought it would just be so fun to have Emily Nichols on the show. Emily Nichols is the host of Habit Hack Your Health, which is a top 1.5% podcast that helps working moms and entrepreneurs habit hack their health in less time, guilt-free. From her own struggles, Emily finally found that women have to do habits differently, and she's sharing these solutions on how to live a healthy lifestyle that doesn't feel overwhelming or complicated, but rather sustainable and empowering through power of habit hacking. So think of this as atomic habits for women. Emily is now on a mission to redefine what health really means and equip other women with these sustainable habit hacks to help midlife moms train for life. Emily is also a wife, boy mom to 2 boys, certified personal trainer, Orange Theory coach, yoga and meditation instructor, behavior change specialist, and Taco Tuesday enthusiast. I love it, and I am so excited for you to hear my chat with Emily. We talk about some really practical tips and strategies that we can put to fitness, to meal prepping, to keeping our house organized. So many good things in store that I think are going to help just get your mindset and your life on the right track this fall. So give it a listen. Can't wait to know what you think. Hey, I'm your host, Dr. Desiree Cassell. I'm an orthopedic and pelvic floor physical therapist specializing in women's health, aka pelvic floor. I'm a wife, mom of 3, foodie, lover of all things movement and nature, and I'm super passionate about educating, empowering, and supporting other women like you to find and maintain balance throughout all aspects of their lives, without pain, pressure, or peeing their pants. And this is the Balanced Momtality Podcast, where we will talk about all things pelvic floor, your core, and optimizing your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum recovery, providing you with the knowledge and tools so that you can feel like the strong, playful, and happy mom that you and your family deserve. Now let's get you out of those pads and back to loving movement. Fill up your water, pop in those AirPods, roll out your mat, and let's connect. Before we start today's episode, just a quick disclaimer that anything mentioned in this podcast is not meant to treat or diagnose any medical conditions. If you have any questions or concerns about your healthcare needs, please seek the care of your medical provider. This is also a safe space where we will be talking about very sensitive but important topics, such as issues with peeing and pooping, relationships, and even sex. So if you have littles around, probably a good idea to pop those AirPods in. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. All right. Emily, thank you so much for joining the Balanced Momtality Podcast. I'm so happy to have you here. I love what you're doing. Yeah, I'm so excited to hear your story. I'm just curious, what got you into the habit world?
Yeah, so I've been in the fitness industry as a personal trainer and group fitness instructor since 2016. And I work with a lot of women, in particular moms like myself. And I realized as I was training folks, we knew what we needed to do. We're like, okay, I know I need to move my body. I know I need to eat healthier and talk nicer to myself, but we weren't doing it. And I think it really just had to do with women have to do habits a little differently because we have so many tabs open in our heads and literally on our computer as well. And it just feels really overwhelming. You know, you need to take care of your health, but how do you do it? So I really approach it with, I like to call my Atomic Habits for Women philosophy, where we're focused on doing a little bit at a time, habit hacking these little pockets of time we have throughout our day to take care of our health so we can build consistency in the long run feel results and see results, but I kind of just think of it as training for life. And I fell in love with habit hacking as I went through my own transformation and just starting with one habit at a time and feeling healthier from the inside out. And I dug super deep into habit strategy because I realized this was working for me. And obviously we can make this work for other moms too.
Oh, I love that so much because I mean, I read Atomic Habits. I obviously being a PTI, I'm all about trying to see like how can we actually make exercise a habit and our
Yes.
health and wellness a habit. And for me personally, you know, I've never actually been diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure I've got ADHD. Like my brain's just all over the place all the time. And so habits have felt impossible for me. And I did read Atomic Habits and I thought it was such an awesome book and it has so many great strategies. But I'm also the type of person that does like absorb all the information and then I just want to do it all. And that's usually why I fall apart. And so I just want to hear like for to start, I guess, because I have so many questions for you. What makes habits different and harder, I would say, maybe for women, or just different for women to kind of grasp and really accomplish?
Yeah, I really noticed the difference because when I was going through my own transformation, my husband was doing the same thing at the same time. We were really digging deep into how we were eating, getting back into movement. I was digging really deep into personal development and my faith journey. And it just seemed so much easier for him. We were doing essentially the same things, but it just came easier for him to be like, hey babe, I'm gonna go for a run after work. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get up at 4:30 a.m. because that's the only time I have. I'm kind of sleep deprived, but that's the only time I have. So I'm gonna move my body and I'm gonna help out with all the meal prep because it just was something that I took on, kind of that all or nothing mentality we have as women sometimes. And I was like, well, and I don't want to be gone in the evenings or even just for like a half an hour walk because I'm going to feel guilty. I'll feel guilty for having time away from my kids or that sink full of dishes and that laundry that's been sitting on my bed for 3 days now that I still need to fold, right? It's not that my husband didn't have all of these same responsibilities. He just thought about them differently than I did. I took them all on as being a nurturing person by nature. Moms are nurturing people by nature. So we take on all of these just emotions of our kids. We're physically exhausted when they're little. I have teenagers now. They're more emotionally exhausting at this point. So you feel so pulled in so many directions, and not to mention work and family and friends, that you just feel so overwhelmed that you're like, I'm not going to do anything. Or kind of like you alluded to, I'm going to sit down on a Sunday evening. I'm going to make a plan for Monday through Saturday. I'm doing everything. I'm going to work out an hour a day. I'm going to prepare lunches for myself and meal prep. And I'm going to meditate for an hour. It's such great intentions. But what ultimately happens is life gets in the way. And we're always starting and stopping because it's not just our lives, it's everyone else around us as well. We think about it differently as women. And then we just do nothing. And then we don't feel so great from the inside out. And that just can really snowball in the way we don't want it to. So we have to think about habits differently and thinking about small incremental habit changes at a time versus trying to do it all. The biggest struggle I hear from my audience is consistency. And it's just because life is crazy. You have the best intentions to do like a workout over your lunch break, but then you get a call and your son forgot his cross country shoes. So you got to run him up to school and then you didn't do your workout. And that happens over and over and over again. So like I said, we just have to think about it a little differently.
I resonate with that so much because, yeah, I think I'm both of those people because I get that decision like fatigue, right? Where I have all the best intentions and I sit and I plan it all out. And then I even will say, like, I'm just going to do one, just focus on one. But then as soon as I see that, like maybe one day not happen, I just start to crumble. And then I look and I'm like, well, where do I start now? And then I just shut down. I'm like, well, then that's it. I'm just sitting on lately, my, I don't know if it's not necessarily like my failure because I've been reading a lot and I've noticed like I like to read, but it's kind of become my shutdown. Like instead of scrolling, I've started picking up a book because I feel more productive and I've found a love for reading, which is funny because I was never a reader, but that was kind of a habit for me
I
just to
love it.
start reading a little bit. But it's kind of become like almost my distraction now, because instead of I get that decision fatigue. I look around the house at all the things I have to do, and I'm like, nope. And I just, and I'm just sitting there reading all day. I'm like, this also is not good, because now my house is crumbling around me. My kids are eating cereal for multiple meals. Like, I need to get back on track. But then, you get so overwhelmed. It's like, well, where do I even start? So I guess that would be my next question for you, is like, what's the best place? Where's the best place to start? Like, obviously it sounds like you said, pick one thing, like don't try to do all the things at once, but, pick that one thing. And then what kind of strategies do you have to try and make that one thing stick and actually, be something we can accomplish realistically and show up more consistently for it?
Sure. Well, I would take a step back and think of what is something called your habit identity. James Clear even talks about this in Atomic Habits, right? What is my habit identity? What habits are going to support who you want to be? Well, I kind of take it a step further and think, well, who do you want to be in this season of life that you're in right now, mama? Like, is it the time of year where both of your kids are in sports and you are running around like mom Uber all the time? You never have room in the back of your trunk to put grocery pickup in because it's full of all the equipment and chairs and blankets, and you hustle your dog around like I do too. And it's just time of year, and you're like, okay, well, what's going to serve me this season of my life? Well, if it's that kind of season, it's like, well, maybe food freedom would really serve me this time of year, where I'm thinking ahead and planning ahead. Crock pot, slow cooker meals that I can do meal delivery for like a month, if that is going to provide me a little bit more convenience and healthier food options versus hitting the drive-through or getting home and having dinner like at 3:30 or like 9:30 and being like, I don't know what we're going to have for dinner. We're just going to piece it together, guys. So maybe it's like, well, I want to be a mom that's healthy and I'm providing nourishing meals for my kids. Okay, well, what habits will support that? It's like, okay, well, some of the ones I just listed, doing some extra meal prep, having some crock pot recipes ready to go, having meal delivery service if that's an option for you, and then committing to doing it. You can sit down every Sunday and create an actual habit loop to do it, because it's one thing to want to do it, it's another thing to take action, right? So a habit loop can give you that momentum to go. So we do something in my program called a Sunday reset, where we're getting our calendar ready for the week. We're planning on our workouts. We're planning out our meals. So for this example, like your cue would be like, okay, I do it every Sunday after church and we have breakfast. After breakfast is over, we clean up the dishes. The cue for me is, okay, sit down, do my grocery order, figure out what we're going to have for the week. And then that's the actual routine. And then the reward on the other side is, I have a plan for the week. I'm not going to feel frazzled. I'll have healthy choices for myself and my kids. Great. And once that's feeling natural and not so much something you have to really think about, like, here is my cue, routine, reward, you're just automatically doing it, then maybe add something else on, like, oh, walking really serves me right now. It gives me clarity, helps me be a more patient and present mom and spouse, and go through that same process again.
I love that. And I think that this is perfect timing for this episode, because most moms right now, if they've got school-aged kids, we're adjusting. My kids actually start tomorrow, and that's their first day of school. And so my brain right now is like, what are all the things I need to get back into, school lunches, and we got to make sure laundry's ready, and, forget even habits for myself. Do I have my habits set in place even to keep my home running? But then I'm a big proponent of making time for yourself. And it was, you mentioned guilt earlier, and I kind of want to cycle back to that just for a second, because I think that probably is our biggest our biggest barrier. Because yes, showing up and picking, the strategies and picking the habit and taking action and consistency, like, that is a lot of work, and choosing to show up and take action is hard. But if you have that guilt around, like, say, taking time to go exercise, I think is probably the biggest one, right? Because we don't have as much guilt around meal planning, because we're serving our family, it's helping the whole system, right? Our team. But when we do stuff for us, it's just so easy for us to feel guilty about that. And I think that is, for me personally, that was my biggest barrier to really building good habits, because even having been active and exercised my whole life off and on. You know, I never felt like, especially having kids, I had kids pretty young. And so there was very quickly this like, I don't have that time for me anymore. And I lost that kind of, you know, identity of myself and what I liked to do and who I was. And I just got sucked into motherhood, as most of us do. And it wasn't until COVID that I got really depressed for the first time. And I had that like, why I don't want to be this angry mom ragey person. Like, who am I right now? And really having that awakening of like, I don't even know anymore. I need to take that time for myself to figure that out. And I knew I liked to exercise and I liked being active. So that was my first thing, is like, okay, I'm going to start getting back into working out. And sure enough, for me, that was enough to like lift me out of my cloud and get, you know, we know all the benefits of exercise and depression. But for me, it was that big, like, oh my gosh, I waited 10 years. My daughter was 10 at that point, and I already had my other daughter. I was pregnant and had my little baby during COVID. So I was in this postpartum, like, COVID depression cloud. And it was enough to just be like, I want to be better for them. And as much as I feel guilty going to the gym, I know it's going to make me a better person and show up as a better mom, but it's easier said than done. So I'm curious, like, from your stance, and, you know, you have older kids too, like, what are some strategies or even just some like thoughts or things that moms and women can just start to kind of ask themselves or, you know, do to kind of push through that guilt and get through that guilt barrier? Do you have any tips for that? Because I think that would be so amazing.
We talk about this a lot in our community and it's always around working out, right? Even if like you're working out from home, you got kids climbing all over you, like, mom, and you're just like, okay, just forget it. Because you're like, I just want no one touching me. I just want to move my body and have happy hormones running through my body.
Yeah.
I love my body so much, but leave me alone. Yes, I get that. There's a saying that goes, an underactive body leads to an overactive mind, right? Do we all feel that? I know everyone listening just went, We're both in our heads, right? You know, when you move your body, like a chemical reaction happens and you feel happier. You have that workout high, even if it's just like going through like a yoga flow and a nice stretch, you feel like, everything's released from your body, but we feel guilty for doing it. So this is a really good example because my boys are 16 and 12, a junior and 7th grader, which is so rude. But when they were little, they were watching me work out from home. I was like, I don't have time to go anywhere and take a class or even go for a walk. I'm just working out from home. And I remember they would get up real early and like sit on the couch and watch me finish working out from home, like before eating their cereal, watching me just like, oh, mom. And then sometimes I went and get the workout done because someone would get up and they're like, oh, mom, I have an upset tummy or something like that. But as they got older, I really saw that they would be like, if I was having a day where it was just like, I'm feeling impatient, I'm not showing up as the best version of me as their mom today. Sometimes they would go, Mom, have you worked out today? Have you taken a walk? They realized when mom moved her body, she was more patient. She was more present. And now that they're older, you know, and they're dealing with being teenagers, I see them turning to movement when they're feeling maybe a little anxious or nervous or stressed out about school. I'm like, go outside and do like move your body, like go to the gym because my oldest can drive now and go lift weights. He's just like, okay. And then when they get back, they're like, I feel so much better. But when they were little, a couple strategies I would use personally for myself and that I use for my clients when your kids are a little bit smaller, and even with your spouse too, I would ask them to ask their family, their kids, if they're old enough to communicate with you, how does it make you feel when mommy goes and works out? In most cases, they're like, I don't care. In most cases, they're like, it's cool, or I don't care. Like, I think it's fun to like watch her do the workouts with her. And even having that communication with your spouse too. Maybe it's a really stressful week for them at work for that week. Maybe they have a big deadline coming up and communicating with them on that as well. And even incorporating your spouse in their habits. I have a one-on-one client where we recently included her husband in her workout routine in the morning. She was like, I feel bad like cutting our coffee short together in the morning. So like she would go and like make the coffee and it set this whole habit loop for her. And she would set the coffee down and she would have a little conversation with her husband, and she included him in there as far as like her cue. It was him and drinking coffee with him. And the routine was, okay, babe, I'm going to go work out now. And he would be like, go, babe, go. You're going to do such a good job. And like on the Rory on the other side, it was like she had his support. She had that time. She didn't feel guilty. And she was like, gosh, that workout just felt good too from the inside out. So that's just kind of to give you a little hope that your kids are watching, but also to have some open communication, even with them if they're yet old enough to communicate with you. In most cases, they're going to be like, no, you're fine. Go work out.
Yes, so good. I think that communication piece is like, right, it seems so simple, but it also is, I think it can be daunting, especially if you've had, bad communication, like even just for example, like I'll throw me and my poor husband under the bus. Like in the initial phase of our relationship, we got together young, we had a baby young. So we were still in college. We were both like 20 with so my daughter's 7, she's about to turn 13 going into 7th grade as well. And she's my oldest though, but I'm also like, no, I'm not ready for a teenager. But I had her so young. And so we were just thrown in the thick of it. And there was no time for us to go to the gym. And there was some resentment there. If someone did take the time, it was like, cool, well, I wish I could go to the gym. And we just kind of got in this rhythm without really communicating about it, where we sensed the negativity. We sensed like there was some resentment. So we just kind of both stopped. And there was a long period of time where that's where we fell into like a cloud of it, where, initially it was when I decided to go, I'm like, I felt so uncomfortable having that conversation with my husband, because I even went in thinking I knew that it wasn't going to go well, that I was just going to do it anyways. Even if he didn't like it, I was going to go. But my poor husband, bless his heart, I go and talk to him and he's like, yeah, like go, it's fine, and it was like, wow, I should have just had this conversation with you a long time ago.
I mean, the stories we tell ourselves. The stories we tell ourselves, right? And sometimes it's just getting it out and you're like, oh, that wasn't true at all. I was making that much bigger than what it needed to be. And like you said, it could be open communication. Maybe it opens up a can of worms where it's like, hey, maybe you are going at a really inconvenient time for your spouse and you need to have that conversation to make it work for your family too.
Yeah. And I love how you mentioned, your kids are watching, because that is so important. I think another, I don't think it should be the sole motivation that we choose to work out, but I think it is a great, if you're feeling too in the mom guilt about it, where it is like, no, I can't like take any time for myself because then it's taking away from kids. Well, then look at your kids, because this is for your kids. You're teaching them how to take care of their body. You're teaching them also, I think the biggest important factor with that is you're teaching them that you are worth it, that you also deserve that time and that energy put into yourself to be healthy and mentally, physically, spiritually, all of those things. So I think it is so beneficial just to work out in front of your kids. So good. I love all of that, because as we know, guilt, I think, is that huge barrier. But going back to school, what are some, because right, like I said, I'm thinking of like you mentioned meal planning and that kind of thing, but just to kind of set up our listeners for that smooth back to school rhythm and getting back in the flow, do you have some, because I'm assuming right now you're also kind of running through those habits and routine stacks and things like that. What are some of those ones that most of us moms with school aged kids getting back in those grooves, or maybe even not with kids, but they're getting into a new routine? What are some things that we should make sure we're looking at so that we are kind of transitioning smoothly with those good habits?
Yeah, my kids actually went back to school last week. So we're like almost a week back to school, which we're thriving being back on our routine. You kind of get off in the summer, you're a little more loosey-goosey with it, which is fine, right? You have to kind of meet yourself where you're at in the season of life. But now we're back to school. I think you need to kind of really sit back and look at what is going to make for a calm morning, not just for you, but for your kids as well. I coach early morning classes a couple days a week, but the mornings I am here, I make sure I'm up before them. I'm getting my coffee going, letting the dog out, and I sit there and I do my devotional. And I do it because it's quiet, but also I'm usually finishing it by the time they come downstairs from getting ready and they see me doing it. and they see, okay, mom is up. She's spending some time with God before getting the day started. But also that's just my calm time as well, like the calm before the storm. But also kind of meeting your kids where they're at too, and helping them create some healthy habits to help them get ready for the morning too. My youngest is in middle school. He used to be the kid that would get up like the very last minute. I'm like throwing clothes at him. And when he started middle school last year, I was like, all right, buddy, you're going to set your clothes out the night before. And I actually wrote out like the habit stack, the routine of what he would do in the morning in the bathroom, put it on a Post-it on the mirror. And he doesn't need any of that now because now it's a routine for him. He just automatically does it. He gets up on his own, has some responsibility on his own as well. My oldest son, he is like type A, very responsible. He will get it all done as well. But also for me, he's usually getting ready to drive to school now. So I'll just kind of sit there and have my coffee and talk with them a little bit before school too. So it's a nice way where we're not just rushed in the morning. Now, when they're littler, I know it's a little bit more hectic and you have to kind of plan.
Chaos.
It's chaos. It's chaos. But to kind of relieve that, still get up a few minutes earlier, even just 10 minutes of quiet to yourself and like drinking your coffee, or go outside and like stand in the grass and ground for a minute while drinking your coffee and get fresh air. It will do wonders for you. And plan the night ahead what is going to make a smoother morning for you. Create a habit stack around that. Like when you're shutting down your kitchen for the night, have everything laid out so it is a less chaotic morning. That way, they're starting the day without chaos, but you are too.
That morning time is so crucial at this point. Like it took me a long time to build in like time before the kids woke up, especially with having super littles, right? Like my youngest is now about to turn 4, also so sad. And so when he was still, and he's still actually, last night I have a 3, 6, and 12-year-old, about to be 4, 6, and 13. But both my 6-year-old and 3-year-old were in my bed this morning when I woke up. And so it's still kind of chaos, but it's not to the point, right, where I was waking up to try and get a little early morning time and the baby would wake up right away. And it was just almost impossible. And for me, sleep is important, right? And as I talk with my patients and stuff too, like sleep is a number one foundational health piece. We don't want to be waking up at 4 a.m. to work out if you're getting to bed late and you're not actually getting the hours of sleep you need. Like there's a trade-off there, but I'm finally in a place where my body at this point naturally wakes up at around 6. Even if I want to sleep in, it's actually kind of annoying. I'm like, oh, I get to sleep in. My gut wakes me up. It's like, nope, you don't. You're going to go to the bathroom right now. And then I'm awake, right? But it is so nice to have that time of just coffee and silence. And I try and I do some meditation and journaling in that time too. But I don't know. For me, I love, I think you were just triggering some ideas for me for my 6-year-old specifically. She is the one that, my oldest, she's always been pretty self-sufficient and she just listens well. So I'll just be like, you need to do this. Okay, she does it. Whereas my 6-year-old is like, get out of bed, get out of bed, get out of bed, get out of bed, come downstairs, come downstairs, come downstairs, like eat your breakfast. Like the whole thing is just very much like, go, 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 go. And she hates feeling pressured. So then she gets so reactive. And I just feel like every morning we're in this fight power struggle. And just having you say, having her getting dressed or having her set her clothes out the night before, and having even I think she's at that age where I could start putting some sticky notes and stuff for her to have a little bit more responsibility with that. And just trying to build in that quiet time in the morning, because no one wants to start their day off in chaos. And unfortunately, that's how I feel looking back at last year. Most of our mornings were like, hurry up, get out the door. I do not want to do that this year. Yeah, exactly. So I'm just so determined this year to just do better at that. And so I love some of those tips, having a smoother morning. And again, meal prepping, having I'm sure some people do lunches the night before, and just kind of thinking ahead on some of those pieces. So good. I'm curious, because that's great for back to school and all of us moms who are juggling all of that. But coming back, because I am, a physical therapist, so exercise is a big thing for me. And I have, bachelor's in nutrition, love nutrition. All the food stuff is huge too. But again, I think that's a little easier for us to get in because we're feeding our families, we're feeding other people. We've got to think about the food. Yeah. But do you have some like strategic tips? Because I know personally I've played around with different habits with me and my patients and stuff for how to fit exercise in. Like how are like, and so I'm curious from your stance, this has probably been the question I'm most excited to see what you say. Like, what are some of your specific strategies of how to get exercise into our day without feeling guilty, and even maybe without having to take a whole hour, to work out and go to the gym and all of that stuff? Because we know even 15-20 minutes is a game changer if we can fit that in. And so what are some of your tricks and habit like tips to kind of really make that happen?
Okay, this is one of my most epic habit hacks. I share it all the time because ladies will remember it. And it's silly, but it helps you getting thinking about habits differently, especially when it comes to movement. So hopefully we're staying hydrated. We're drinking enough water. We're not chugging coffee all day long. I'm feeling dehydrated, right? We all got our water. So we're staying hydrated. Ultimately, we're going to find ourselves going to the bathroom a lot throughout the day. So I want to create a habit loop for you where the cue is, oh, it's time to go potty. The routine is you go to the bathroom, you wash your hands, do 10 squats. The reward on the other side is, okay, I just worked out. So say you go to the bathroom 10 times a day. That's 100 squats you just did. If you were to stand here and say, okay, Emily, let's do 100 squats, I'd be like, okay, my form would probably fall, my glutes and my quads would burn out. I'd be like, no, we're not going to do 100, right? But if we break it into small little movement like that throughout the day where it's already stacked around something you're already doing, going to the bathroom, you can fit in movement that way. Another habit hack, someone actually suggested this to me and I was like, this is brilliant. She was listening to the show and she goes, I thought of my own habit hack. She goes, when I start the shower and when I let it warm up, I stand there and I either do calf raises or I just put my hands on the counter and do push-ups on my bathroom counter as the water is warming up. And I'm like, brilliant. I love it. And one of the easiest ones is to maybe on every hour on the hour, if you sit a lot at your desk, set a reminder on your calendar every hour that just says, girl, stand up, get a walking pad if that's accessible to you. That actually helps me stay more focused when I'm working at my laptop versus just sitting. I get really like daydreaming while I'm sitting, but focus in and get yourself moving. Getting some more of that neat movement in throughout the day will serve you as well if you find yourself sitting a lot. So we just have to get a little creative with our habits like that.
Yes, you are right on the money. And I love your bathroom tip. And I love that you said doing squats after you go to the bathroom, because I'm just going to say, if you do squats before, it might be kind of hard to pee. So let's go pee and then do those squats. But I think the bathroom and using things like that as a trigger to do your routine. Like for me, my couple bathroom tips that I've had patients do, because one of the things I talk a lot about being a pelvic floor therapist is we need to do, especially if you have pelvic pain or pain with intercourse, or we know there's pelvic tightness, we need to do some internal release work. And that usually entails like a wand and privacy. And it can be a big barrier that doesn't really happen very often. But the bathroom is a great time where you're already, getting undressed. You're already in there. You're showing up pretty regularly there. So after you go to the bathroom and you wash up, you're just going to, take your thumb and just kind of do some gentle stretching in the perineum, doing calf stretch at the sink. Like there's so many good stacks for the bathroom because like you said, we're there all the time anyways. And so just stacking things like that can be so helpful because they do compound, right? Like, yes, ideally, if we could go do squats and do them heavy enough that we're burning out our muscles after 3 sets, that's awesome, but that's not always accessible and feasible for a lot of us. And so just doing stuff here and there really does make a huge difference. And I think that as women, we do go in that and I think especially as moms, there's kind of more of that all or nothing mindset of like, oh, well, I can't get to the gym and get my heart rate up, or I can't work out consistently without my kids bugging me. So I'm not really getting the benefit of it. And so I'm just not going to do it. And that's just so far from the truth, right? Like even if we're doing 10 squats and your kids are running in and you don't come back to do 10 squats till an hour later, that's still something. And it's moving your body, getting circulation through your body. And so it's still all so beneficial. So I just love all of the tips that you've shared with us. And I know we could chat for so long about all of these fun habits that we can need to start taking into our life and daily routine. But I think you gave us such a good start moving into the fall and into these new school rhythms, and hopefully motivating a lot of our listeners to just start making time for themselves, even if it's just 5 minutes, just starting with something. I always try and get with my patients that emphasis of find that time for you, even if it's 5 minutes, and prioritize that time and protect that time, because everything else is going to stack in and fill that space. And most of us let it do that, right? It's like, oh, well, I have that appointment now, or, oh, my husband just came home, so I'm not doing that anymore, or, oh, now my kid needs me. Look at all those dishes. The list is never ending. So if we don't take that time for ourselves and make those habits a priority and show up, they won't even become habits. So I just love your message. I love what you're doing. And just that, all of that motivation you gave us is so, so good. So thank you so much for being on the show. And I just want you to leave our listeners with, tell them how they can reach you, how they can find you, how they can work with you, all that good stuff.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on your show. What an honor. You can come listen to Habit Hack Your Health wherever you listen to your podcast. You can go and find me on Instagram as well at Emily Nichols 22. I have a accelerator habit course that literally is an audio course made for a busy working mom in mind to take on the go. And I offer one-on-one coaching as well. But thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh, so good. I've been having fun binging your show lately. So I suggest everybody go check it out. So fun. And thanks again. I'm sure we will chat again sometime soon.
Well, that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day. I know you've got so many other important things going on, but I hope it was helpful and you leave here with some tools to help you in your healing journey. And I just want to ask you, if you have found this helpful, to please leave a review on iTunes. Scroll down to the bottom of my podcast page and leave that 5-star review so it can help other women see this information. And also, if you want to be a part of my community of amazing women trying to balance all the things, great tips and insight, and sharing stories and just motivating each other along the way, feel free to join my Facebook group, The Balanced Momtality Wellness and Support. I hope to see you here next time on the Balanced Momtality Podcast.